Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's staying nice and warm this afternoon, that you're enjoying the view of the sun shining on the freshly fallen snow, how the snow glistens in its rays, and you're getting prepared for maybe some good football games a little bit later on today, spending some time with your family. But also, I want to encourage you to call on your neighbors to check on them, those that may be by themselves. Make sure they're okay. A phone call can go a long way. You may even use this time to introduce yourself to your neighbor. Loving your neighbor as yourself. You've taken care of providing for your family, taking care of shoveling your driveways, what have you. And there's a great service project that's right next door or across the street or around the corner that each of you could maybe participate with. It may be just bringing them some food or whatever. Even just fellowship. Take advantage of the time. Well, I don't know if you've noticed or not. We have just witnessed a major storm, and the storm has had a name. It's called Jonas 2016. It came through our area over the last couple days, and I noticed that storms can be the major headlines. It can be the cover story, if you will, especially when it affects a group of people. So this afternoon, in the thought process of looking at storms and what have you, knowing that we couldn't be together this morning, I thought, well, you know what? There is an opportunity that we can use through technology to be able to share God's message with each other. Most everyone, and that message will have to do with storms this morning. Most everyone here in the Mid-Atlantic region of the United States has been part of the cover story because of the impact of Jonas 2016. Here in our home, we have been impacted. So much so that there's 30 inches of snow that's on the ground. Some of our muscles are sore. I believe that we get more muscle as we get older because I certainly feel more muscle in my body than I ever knew was there before. Those muscles, they come to life probably because of a constant effort to remove the snow from our driveway. That effort encompassed about 6 solid hours so far as a team effort, Jennifer and the boys and myself. That's even using an ATV that's been equipped with a snowplow. Even though it's been equipped with a snowplow, that doesn't excuse us from having frozen faces, to having wet clothes, making sure paths were clear for our dog, even though the dog wasn't too keen on the path. Enjoying the cookies, the meals, the refreshments that Jennifer would make for us. All of us have been impacted by this storm, and I'm sure you have too. So in that light, as I've thought about the storm, this particular storm gave us ample warning that it was on its way. It was a cover story, as I mentioned earlier. Most of the time when a major storm comes, we do have ample warning. There's things that are in place, Doppler radar, all those good things. There's telephone calls, there's pictures, text messages, whatever, that notify us that something is on its way. And so we need to be ready. It's the fast storms, though, that kind of pop into our lives that kind of catch us off guard. It's the big ones can catch us off guard too, especially if we wait until the last minute to get ready for those storms. I used to work in the grocery store business, and time again I would see people just make a mad dash at the last minute, and they would get frustrated because there wasn't anything left on the shelves. There wasn't milk, there wasn't bread, and there wasn't the all-important toilet paper that would have been left there. But if you would have recognized the warnings earlier, there was enough to go around for sure. But this particular storm, this big storm, kind of caught us off guard, or at least me, I should say, off guard. I knew it was coming. I was busy preparing for other people so that they were ready for the storm. And I came home on Friday. It was about 11:25 in the morning. Came home from work early, and this first snowflake started to fall, and I knew that there was some preparation things that needed to happen. Jennifer and the boys, they did a good job of handling the things that they were aware of. But one of the things that I was concerned about was power going out, which meant our generator needed to be started. And so our generator has a key that's able to start that generator. Yeah, it has a pull start, but the generator is such a size that this key is one of the best ways to get it started. It's got more power that way. It's got electronic start. But the generator hadn't been started for over a year. And by a year, I mean not December of 2015. I'm talking January of 2015. I thought about it. I said, it'll be okay. Well, lo and behold, the storm came. So I went to get the key, and I couldn't find the key anywhere. Snow was falling, the temperature was dropping, the wind began to stir the anxiety, and the generator hadn't been tested at all. As I went to get that key and couldn't find it, I looked everywhere that I thought the key would be. I looked on the countertops. I looked on the little key holder. And, of course, I didn't spend a lot of time looking in those areas, so I went to the next best thing, and I began to raise my voice to the family as if that raising of the voice was going to motivate them to help me find the key. Well, in the middle of all of that, I happened to look down, and there again on the key holder was the key. Oh, thank you. That was an act of God's grace right there to save me from making a fool out of myself. But anyway, I went to the generator. I turned the key, and you could hear the engine wanting to turn over, but nothing. There was no fire up. It was just the noise of things wanting to get going. And in the process of that, as the snow began to fall even faster and faster, covering our driveway, and the wind began to stir even louder and louder, I found myself saying a prayer kind of inside of my own head. Lord, you know that we need you to start this generator. Don't you care about the storm that's on its way? In fact, don't you care about the storm that's already here? It's going to catch up with us faster than what you're able to respond. That's kind of the mindset that was there. Guess what? After saying all of that, letting the Lord know exactly how I feel, the generator, it didn't start. I then found myself saying, why? Lord, why won't you let the generator start? I opened my eyes, I looked down, and I found that the fuel valve was turned off. I had no fuel for the spark to fire into. I turned the valve on, I turned the key, and the engine turned over, and finally, there was a peace that came even through the storm. So I share that with you because sometimes I think that we miss the opportunity to catch hold of the peace that can come even through storms. There's a story in the Bible. It's found in the New Testament, in the Gospels according to Matthew, Mark, and Luke, where Jesus calms a storm. The storm, it was a big deal to those who were in the storm, just like storms in your own life can be a big deal to you. Mark's Gospel account tells us that Jesus extended an invitation prior to the storm to the disciples to go to the other side of the lake. It was on the other side of the lake that there was a group of people that needed to know that Jesus is with them, just as those that were on the previous side knew that Jesus was with them, just as those that were in the middle of the journey had Jesus with them. They needed to know. They wanted to share. And so the call of God was, let's go to the other side. It doesn't say it exactly like this in the scriptures, but my version of what is said in this dialogue with Jesus and the disciples was, sure, why not? I mean, Jesus is with us. What could possibly go wrong? And so they set off on the journey. We have no idea how long the journey took them. We just know that according to Mark chapter 4, verse 37, that there was a squall that popped up. There was a storm that came along their way. It was a significant storm, so much so that it had hurricane force winds. The waves were breaking over the side of the boat. And it wasn't just any storm. It was a mega storm. It was a strong storm. It was a loud storm. It was a cover story type of a storm. It was a big deal. Just like the storms in your own life and my life, when they come up, when we least expect it, they can be furious, they can be strong, they can be loud, they can be a big deal. And I noticed something, though, in the verse prior to verse 37. Verse 36 says that in this storm, there were other boats that were with them. There were other boats that were with them. That's a huge, huge verse. Has a lot of impact to unpack out of it. You might think that you're the only one in the storm. In the storm, in this particular storm that Jonas 2016 has left with us, it has impacted an entire region. In that region are people. In that region are families. And in that region are you. I don't want you to think that you're the only one that is in the storm or has ever encountered a storm. Take a closer look around and you're going to see that there's other boats that are with you. There's other families and lives that are dealing with challenges as well. I want you to take a closer look though. Because if you take a closer look, you'll realize that Jesus is there with you too, in the middle of the storm. It's at moments like this, though, that people will come to me and say, well, Pastor, look, it sure does look like he's sleeping. He doesn't care. Our boat is about ready to capsize. It's taking on a lot of water. We're going to drown. My question, as I look into this text of the storm, into the context of our lives, is, are we too focused on the storm to miss the peace of God in the storm? Because the peace of God does not mean that there's going to be life without conflict. It does not mean that life is going to go around us. It does not mean that illness will not pass our house. It does not mean that bills will stop coming. It does not mean that those closest to us will face storms of their own. It certainly does not mean that we won't feel alone sometimes. The peace of God does do this. The peace of God reminds us that the fullness of God is with us. In fact, Jesus said, my peace I give to you. What that means is his fullness he gives to us. Because the fullness of God is among us. The fullness of God is with us even in the storms of life. He certainly did not cause the storm in your life. Can he do that? Could he do that? Certainly he could. Certainly he could. This story reminds us that when the storms of life pop up that are unexpected, that Jesus is willing to calm the storm. Jesus' response, once the storm was calmed, to the people that were just moments ago ridiculing him, asking him if he doesn't care, was this: where is your faith? Can I ask you where your faith is? Many times people will say to me, Pastor, I just don't have faith like I used to. Or, I seem to have lost my faith. No, really what you have done is most likely rejected your faith. And if you think that you've lost it, or you understand that you may have rejected it, I'd encourage you to go back to the place where you left it, and you'll find that it's there. Most of the time, where that is left is where the storm has popped up into your life, and it's been a loud, mega, strong storm. And it's at those times you'll hear God's voice. And he'll simply say, is your faith in the storm that is out to get you, or is it in the one who calls you to the other side? Is it in the one who promises you safe passage? He didn't say, hey, let's go get in the storm. He said, let's go to the other side. In my own life, through life experience, I now understand that I would rather be in a storm with Jesus than without. And I would rather be in a storm with other people, with Jesus among us, than without. Because he promises not just to bring me through, he promises to bring you through. He promises to bring us through. Mark Batterson wrote a book once called The Grave Robber, and in that story, in that book, he describes Jesus in many different aspects. He's the water walker, he's the winemaker, he is the grave robber. All of those are great things. I want you to understand too that Jesus is the table turner. He can turn the tables on the things of life that need to have turned upside down. He's also the storm calmer. And you'll find that when he calms the storm in your life, your calm storm will affect the lives of those that are around you. The other boats that were with him, the storm just wasn't just calmed in and around the boat that he was in. It calmed the storms of life for those boats that were with him as well. People will ask you, how did you make it? How did you get to the other side? And you're going to be able to say, because the power and the grace of God was with me in its fullness. What is the grace of God? The grace of God is not something that you say over breakfast, over a meal. Those things are encouraged for sure. Those are witnesses and testimonies to people around you. I like what my brother-in-law Dave said to me one time when I asked him for a definition of grace. He said, grace isn't what most people may think it to be. In his view, grace is movement with a purpose, like an ice skater, a figure skater that skates on the ice. They just kind of glide along, but every move that they make is with a purpose, and it's beautifully done. So the fullness and the power of God that comes into your life by his grace is movement with a purpose. And oftentimes that movement with a purpose is to calm the storm. Your calm storm will also ready you to ride the storm out with others. There are other people that are in storms. They may be similar to yours. And you'll be able to encourage them through by guiding them to the one who's able to calm the storm. And lastly, your calm storm will turn your focus on seeing Jesus is with you and that his arm is not too short to calm that storm you're in. The psalmist David, he once said while looking for help in a moment of frustration in Psalm 121 verse 1, he said, I look to the hills and where does my help come from? Here we live in the Shenandoah Valley and I can see the mountain ranges from our house. It's a beautiful sight to see. But I realized that I got to look a little higher because our help isn't going to come from the hills. Our help isn't going to come from just nature itself. Our help is going to come from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And that help can wash you whiter than snow. I pray you're encouraged today. Share it with a friend. Call somebody and remind them that you're thinking of them. And they may be reminded that Jesus is there in the middle of their storm. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. And may his face shine upon you and make you whiter than snow. To God be the glory. Thanks for listening and tuning in. God bless you. Bye.